The premier event for infection prevention and control is coming to San Antonio this June. APIC's annual conference brings you the latest research, innovative products, and practical knowledge to help you prevent infection. From inspiring keynotes to thought-provoking panel discussions, APIC 24 curates an extraordinary platform for knowledge exchange. Meet IPs from around the world who face the same daily challenges as you. If you work in infection prevention and control, you don't want to miss this event. Learn more and register to join us, in person or virtually, at annual.apic.org.
You are listening to the 5-Second Rule podcast presented by APIC, the Association for Professionals in Infection Control and Epidemiology. This podcast is produced by the APIC Communications Committee and is intended to be a conversation between our hosts and professionals practicing in the infection prevention and control industry. You will learn and be entertained, but most of all, we hope you will be inspired by our community and the work of our peers. And now, on to the show.
Welcome to the 5-Second Rule podcast. We are your hosts. I am Lerenza Howard, and my preferred pronouns are she, her.
Hi, and I'm Kelly Holmes. My preferred pronouns are also she, her. So welcome to the podcast today. How are you doing, Lerenza?
I am doing great. Happy Valentine's Day.
Oh, you too. You too. So tell me about, our listeners know that you've been in the field for about 2 years now, and you've accomplished a lot in that period of time. But how did you break into the role as infection preventionist?
Thank you. That's such a great question. So actually, and possibly this is a discussion for a different day, I am proud to say that, I had a sponsor that was willing to put their name on the line for me to attain an infection preventionist role. As some listeners may know, my background is in non-clinical and clinical microbiology. Therefore, I had that foundational experience to attain a role in infection prevention, but just networking. And because I did find issues trying to attain an infection preventionist roles, it was years, for me trying to break into the profession, but definitely marketing my capabilities. And someone took a chance on, conveying my skills and my experience to their leader. And that's how I attained my first role.
Oh, I think that's great. And I think that really rolls well into the topic of today's show. And we have two guest speakers that are really experienced in not only breaking into the field, but then also growing into a leadership role within the field.
Absolutely. But I do want to highlight your experience, which I believe is truly amazing, especially a gift for this podcast to have the extensive experience in infection prevention as you and as a consultant, which, some of our listeners may be interested in consultancy in infection prevention. So you definitely add an amazing amount of experience. Tell us, how did you attain your role in infection prevention and in consulting?
Well, when I was doing my master's in Houston, I was also working at MD Anderson in their immunology department. So I had that lab experience going for me. And then when I was getting my master's, I was trying to just get as much experience as I could. So I was doing unpaid internships at the health department. And then I also worked with the mosquito control division, which was super cool, I must say. Yeah, I know what mosquitoes are biting you. So that was fun. And then I also worked, that was right when West Nile virus was emerging.
Wow.
So I was able to work with a study where we were working with the homeless population in Houston and kind of testing their antibody levels to exposure to West Nile virus. So that was relevant experience to add to my resume. And then I found this company that was willing to support people with a public health background or epidemiology in the role of an infection preventionist. So I think that, my experience getting my master's and then those roles to volunteer helped make my resume strong and make me a candidate for that job.
You know what? I think that you definitely hit a key point in volunteerism. I think that many people expect to be paid for roles. And of course, we anticipate an income from whatever position it is that we take on. But especially those that are breaking into the field, I really feel as though there's a tremendous value in being willing to volunteer in certain areas just to gain more knowledge and to build relationships.
I totally agree. And, each one of those positions, it was not like a very long position because they were
Mhm.
volunteer roles. So, mosquito control, I think I did that for 3 months. I think the health department, maybe 6 months. So they weren't hugely long roles, but it was enough to get that experience and to be able to put that on my resume and speak intelligently about the experience that I had and use that to apply to infection prevention in a hospital setting.
Wow, that's such amazing. I really am excited about this episode today. And you know what, Kelly, we have two amazing guests here to discuss today's topic with us.
I'm going to go ahead and introduce Lisa Sturm. Lisa has been in the field for infection prevention for almost 30 years. She's certified in infection prevention and is a fellow of APIC. Prior to working in IP, she was a nuclear medicine technologist. She pursued her undergraduate degree in microbiology and then her graduate degree in master's in public health, hospital, and molecular epidemiology. Lisa is currently the chair of National APIC's Public Policy Committee and legislative co-chair for APIC Great Lakes chapter.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Kelly.
We're happy to have you, Lisa.
And also we have Chaz Roan, who has been certified in infection prevention and control since 2012, recognized as an APIC hero in 2016, accepted as an APIC fellow in 2019, and recognized as an APIC champion in 2022. He is currently the Assistant Vice President of Infection Prevention for HCA Healthcare North Florida Division. Thank you and welcome, Chaz.
Hey, good morning. I'm so happy to be back on the show. And I think just relevant to the conversation, I love the diverse backgrounds. Also want to note that I have a master's in public health.
Yay, MPH.
Incredible. Welcome to the club. Today we have a really great voicemail that one of our listeners left on the APIC podcast website on the click to join the conversation button. And so today we wanted to play that for both you, Chaz and Lisa, to get your feedback on that.
Hello, 5-second rule. My name is Whitney Erdman, and I would call myself an aspiring infection preventionist. A little bit about me is my background is in microbiology for aseptic manufacturing. But in 2020, I did get my MPH with a concentration in infection control. However, I have found it difficult to break into the industry without having a nursing background. So I was wondering if you had any suggestions on how to make myself a better candidate for infection prevention jobs.
So this voicemail is a great segue into our topic today. So Lisa and Chaz, what tips and tricks do you have for our listener that you would share or recommend?
I'm really excited that we got this question, Kelly, because I really think others are experiencing this same thing and this same kind of dilemma. How do I break in? The silver lining, if there is any silver lining to the COVID-19 pandemic, is that it really exposed what an infection preventionist is across not just healthcare, but into other industries as well. And I hope that we can harness that exposure and turn it into more people interested in breaking into the field. The best advice I give to students or other healthcare professionals that want to dip their toe, if you will, into infection prevention is to first learn about the profession. And the best place really to learn about our profession is the Association for Professionals in Infection Control and Epidemiology, because that is what we do with APIC. APIC is really focused and centered around infection prevention. So I would encourage our listeners to really explore that website in depth. There's a lot of links, and there's a lot of additional sub pages that you can look at. It is truly kind of one-stop shopping, but don't stop there. Read the literature, read the peer-reviewed articles that have been published about infection prevention, and there's thousands of them out there. So I would just say absorb as much as you can to prepare yourself for breaking into the field. And then I know Chaz is going to talk a little bit more about some professional development things you can do, but that's always my first advice, is to expose yourself and learn more about the field, because it is quite a vast field.
That's such amazing, Lisa. So Chaz, on to you. What are your thoughts? We have an individual who is a microbiologist at an aseptic manufacturing facility trying to break into infection prevention. What are your insights regarding this?
Yeah, Lerenza, I think you really hit the nail on the head in terms of what I always recommend right off the bat is get connected. And so for me specifically, I'm an introverted person. So going to meetings, meeting new people, trying to network face to face, that can be a little intimidating for me. So I've really leveraged LinkedIn to really reach out and just connect with IPs all over the United States. And we've struck up conversations, and there's the chat feature. And I actually get a lot of questions, just like what the listeners sent in to us about how do I break in. And one of the main things I suggest is get plugged in, get connected, get active on LinkedIn, and make those connections. And so that way you have a person when you apply for a position that you may be able to reach out to check on your application or say, hey, I'm planning to apply. Do you have any tips? Or what have you? Because a lot of times we'll send our application off to a computer HR system, and they may get weeded out based on what's in your resume or what's not in your resume. And so it's always good to have someone you can connect with directly about that position and ask any follow-up questions or even get advice prior to applying. And then the other thing I would say in terms of your resume and how you present yourself is take a look at your resume and look at the APIC competency model and compare the two and learn how to spell out your skill set in terms of the APIC competency model. And just because you may not have direct or specific experience in infection prevention, I can guarantee you that some of your prior experience can still be framed in terms of that APIC competency model, even down to using the same keywords and language that are in the model. And I think that will really grab the application reviewer's attention. And make them more interested in your application. So those are just a couple of tips that I always suggest.
Wow, that's such amazing, Chaz. I would add, as far as someone, I myself, who has a background in microbiology, specifically in an aseptic manufacturing facility for radioactive pharmaceuticals, it can be a daunting task trying to break into, this profession because, as Chaz noted, you have to try to get yourself plugged in. It's very valuable to learn about the profession. Is this something that you really want to take on? Gain relationships with individuals, hiring managers, and infection preventionists to ascertain, details regarding the profession. But one thing that I will say that I've used prior to even knowing that there was terminology for it is conducting an informational interview, putting yourself out there and being willing to connect with people that are in higher positions to get to know what are they expecting from future candidates. Conducting an informational interview is essentially you reaching out to those individuals that you aspire to be, albeit via LinkedIn or whatever resource that you utilize. And I will shout out Google. Google is a great resource in finding informational interview questions to potentially ask those leaders or infection preventionists. So that's my recommendation. Kelly, what are your thoughts?
I agree, Lerenza, and I love that term, informational interview. I think that that is very relevant, and I think that Lisa's advice goes hand in hand with Chaz's in, if you review the APIC website first and you kind of get your hands on some resources and try to read up a little bit about infection prevention, it will benefit you in your interview because you'll have intelligent questions to ask and look like you're prepared to step into the role. So I think that that was all very good advice.
Absolutely. So, Chaz, what is your background? How did you attain a role in infection prevention and subsequently, become the leader that you are today?
Yeah, so actually graduated and I was fortunate enough to land a position in infection prevention. And something that one of my mentors taught me is it is not always what you know, but sometimes it's also who you know. And so going back to get connected in this community, it's a pretty small, if you will, tight knit community. I know a lot of people that are connected to others, and you will find the same thing as you get out there. But and I was saying before, just trying to get past the computer system, because unfortunately, we are still seeing a lot of positions posted that are asking for a nursing degree. And that was the case when I applied. And so the only way I was able to circumvent that is because I interned at a facility for 3 months as part of my master's program to do my special project. And my preceptor knew the coordinator where I was applying to become an IP. And so she was able to vouch for me and also pass my resume along to her directly instead of relying on that to go through an HR system that would get weeded out. And so I was able to at least land an interview. And then my next piece of advice would be, if you get an interview, please make sure you are prepared and you knock it out of the park. And so I really understood my skill set and what I brought to the table as a master's prepared epidemiologist. And that's what I spoke to in the interview. And so fortunately, their medical director for the IP program recognized the importance of the skill set that I brought to the table. And he also recognized that it was missing from the team. And so he was very interested in me as a candidate. And I think in discussions, they recognized some of the gaps that I could fill on their team, and the rest is history. So leveraging personal relationships and also your brand, or how you represent yourself, how you put yourself out there, even in your resume, can speak volumes.
That's great advice, Chaz. What do you think about the hiring managers, or what advice, I guess, would you have for if you are part of an infection prevention team and you have a spot to fill? What would you recommend to those people working with the hiring managers to perhaps open up the job description to a more broad audience, not just the RN, BSN route?
Yeah, so what I've actually found is a lot of IPs are not even involved with developing the job description for the posting that they are recruiting for. And so that would be the first step. You need to be involved in that because you know best what you are looking for your team, and you know what gaps you have, and you know what experience and skill set you're looking for. So if you're not involved with that process, or you have not given input or looked at your job descriptions, I would encourage you to take that first step and really get involved, build that relationship with HR. And I think just having that conversation around what you're looking for, and just being open-minded in the backgrounds that can be infection preventionists, first being aware of the different backgrounds and being open-minded about who you would want to bring into your team. I actually was reading a paper in the AGIC journal about recruitment and retention of IPs. And it talked about how, since we're mostly nursing at this point, that's who's doing most of the hiring. And research shows that we tend to hire people that are like us, or that have the same experience and skill set. So I think we just need to challenge ourselves to think outside of the box of what we know and what we're comfortable with, and explore what other possibilities and opportunities may be out there.
I definitely agree. Lisa, you have amazing experience as well. And I really love the resource that will be attached to this episode, your YouTube video. So, what are some insights that you have for individuals that are trying to break into the field? They do not have clinical experience as a medical technologist, they do not have nursing experience. What are some tips and tricks that you have regarding that?
Yeah, Lorenzo, thank you. I absolutely want to echo what Chaz and Kelly and you have already said, which is, there is no cookie cutter model for a successful infection preventionist, and a diverse team is a stronger team, which is why, to Chaz's point, when he interviewed, one of the interviewers recognized that a well-rounded team is always going to be stronger. So I would definitely encourage people to not give up that desire if you want to be in infection prevention. But I also want to say, one of my favorite books that I frequently talk to my MPH students is a book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. So whatever you've done to get to, say you're a microbiologist, to get to that point has obviously been successful, but you do need to take it up another notch if you want to break into the field. And this goes back to all the things that were already mentioned, such as volunteering, making those connections, joining APIC, joining your APIC chapter, which is really where the rubber meets the road, where you can start connecting names and faces, and then they can start seeing you as a potentially valuable contributing professional to the field. So you do have to put yourself out there. You have to market yourself. And you have to know your strengths, right? So if your strength is microbiology, it is very possible the team you're trying to join does not have that strength. So you're going to fill that need. And it's not always going to be 100%, right? So maybe they already have somebody with that background, but don't stop trying. So, you might not succeed on the first or second or even the third attempt, but if you are dedicated and you have that fire in your belly to be an infection preventionist, I can assure you, you will be successful.
And Lisa, I love all of the things you're saying, and like to summarize that into a statement that I always tell people: take initiative with your career. Mm-hmm. No one is going to care more about your career than you do. So you can't wait for people to present opportunities or help you get to where you want to go. Those things are great, but we have to be the ones that are driving our career. And so look for opportunities. Like you said, go to those meetings and get connected. Take advantage of volunteering opportunities. Research projects based on infection prevention. Anything you can do to expand your skill set, you have to take initiative and get out there and get it done to make yourself a better and more attractive candidate.
Definitely. I can attest to being a member of an EPIC chapter, and it really allows for you to build relationships. You have hiring managers that are volunteering on respective committees. It's really a great way, as was previously noted, a great way to build those relationships as someone who is trying to break into the field. You without having to work within an organization, you can volunteer and really show your leadership skills and or your teamwork building and being able to take on tasks and execute successfully. It allows for you to really reflect your skills to potential hiring managers and or IP colleagues that could put in a reference for you and possibly be a sponsor for you to attain an infection preventionist role. But one thing that is valuable to me regarding this discussion is being quite transparent, because I think that is something that can deter people from attaining these roles, because maybe, individuals might not be so willing to, put into detail their experience in trying to attain roles. So I have been rejected for positions. Right. At this point in time, I save my rejections as motivation. I seek to be rejected, honestly, because all in all, even as it pertains to trying to reach out to individuals for an informational interview, there's that potential that you can be rejected. But at least you have that response, and you know that now it's time for you to move on and proceed and continue to ask others for potential opportunities to speak. So I want to ask you both regarding rejection. How does one handle rejection in trying to attain a role in infection prevention, and what should they do to persevere?
I'm happy to address that, Lorenzo. I think that, like I just alluded to, it might not happen the first, the second, or even the third time, but try not to be discouraged. And if possible, it is acceptable to ask the person that interviewed you for feedback, kind of a post interview debrief, if you will. Now, they may not agree to it and they might not respond to your email. But if they do, take advantage of the opportunity and be prepared to get some constructive criticism. I had an individual that I interviewed once. She was an internal microbiology candidate, and she really kind of just tanked the interview. You know, she didn't have good answers to my questions. She didn't research the field. And so I had a really long follow-up discussion with her, and I really was honest with her, and she was receptive to the feedback. And I said, you know, here's what you could do better next time you apply for either a position with me or outside of this health system. So if you can take advantage of that opportunity, I would go for that. And if you can't, it always is helpful to have a mentor preferably, you know, within healthcare or even within infection prevention. And I always recommend before you do an interview, especially if you're new at interviewing, to do a mock interview with either a mentor or a hiring manager, and maybe in any field. And they can, first of all, they can take away some of the interview jitters. But second of all, they can also review your CV, review your cover letter, your resume, and also give you feedback on how you interviewed as a potential candidate. So those are some tips I give for garnering feedback.
Chaz, what are your thoughts about rejection and possibly being rejected as someone trying to attain a role within infection prevention? How do they continue to persevere?
Yeah, I think, this conversation just isn't about breaking in, but I think even trying to go to the next level once you've gotten into the field, some things you can do. You have to go back to the drawing board and reevaluate yourself, see if there's anything that you can do better based on feedback. But there are some tools out there to assist you with that as well. And so one of those tools or resources would be the Associate IPC certification. So that's an introductory certification that you can get without any job experience in IP. And so to me, that would indicate that a candidate has taken initiative, they know about the field, and they've gone so far as to invest their own resources in getting this certification to identify them as someone that has the foundational knowledge that an IP needs to have, but not necessarily the work experience at this point. But I think once you are able to land a position, in order to move on, we have to talk about career development. And so APIC has several assessment type tools that you can take advantage of. One of them is the novice roadmap. And so that will basically walk you from a brand new IP up until the point where you're ready to sit for that certification in infection control. And it gives you literally a roadmap of things that you should do, experience, read about, investigate before you sit for that exam. And then once you're certified, there's also the Proficient Practitioner Bridge that walks you from certification all the way through obtaining a fellowship with APIC. And so it walks you from, approaching proficient into that expert level of IP, and then sets you up again for obtaining those things along your pathway. I also just want to throw out there too that I'm on the APIC committee that's working on, we call it the academic pathway, and I'm one of the co-chairs. And what we're working on are a few pathways academically for IPs to get into the field. And so the 3 products that we're working on right now are a framework for a 10-week internship. And so facilities, health departments, anyone can take this framework, and they have a 10-week program laid out on how they can quickly get anyone who wants to be an IP up to speed. It can be used as an onboarding tool to help prepare them. The other thing that we are working on right now is a graduate level certificate in infection prevention. So again, you don't have to have any work experience for that. But if you have an academic certificate that covers parts of the competency model that are foundational to what IPs do, again, that shows initiative, and you've obtained a piece of paper that says you have the educational background. And then finally, we're also developing curriculum for a master's degree in infection prevention. And again, it's going to be a framework that APIC develops on this committee, and then it will be marketed to universities who are interested in starting a program for a master's in a master's in infection prevention. And so they already know what courses that they would need to pull from, how to organize the program, and they can easily get it up and running to increase the pipeline of IPs to the field, and also just help people go from one level of IP to the next.
Chaz, that's so exciting. I think that the work that you guys are doing on the academic pathway is going to provide people within the field, people who are trying to get into the field, and then the leaders that are supporting IPs through their career, a lot of really valuable resources. And also, thank you for walking us through those certification possibilities. So the AIPC is for people you don't have to be working in the field, but you can sit for this exam. And I do think that that's a very valuable thing to put on your resume to show your commitment to infection prevention, and would certainly, I think, get attention on your resume with the hiring manager. And then once you've been in the field for a year, you can sit for the certification, the CIC, and then leading on to your FAPIC for your career development. So bringing us to the point of, so now you're in infection prevention, you have your foot in the door, but, I still want to grow. I want to, go beyond just an entry-level infection preventionist. So what, Lisa and Chaz, what advice do you have for growing within the field once you get your foot in the door?
I think you have to have that never-ending curiosity, Kelly, to continue to learn and advance yourself. It is not a static profession, right? So it is dynamic to the point of almost daily something new is coming out where you have to, educate yourself and become aware of. And I really encourage people to, so say you have a certain belief model about, say, a certain technology or a certain task or approach to infection prevention. You have to stretch your brain to learn about outside of that belief model and learn about all of the different components of infection prevention, because I guarantee you're going to be asked about it and you need to be schooled in that, So I definitely recommend thinking outside the box, learning from other disciplines as well. So even though infection prevention is a broad discipline, there are other disciplines that impact infection prevention. And anybody that's already an IP knows sometimes you have to know about plumbing, other days you have to know about air, and then other times you have to know about food and food service. I mean, there really is, it's the A to Z, right, of a profession. So take advantage. There's so many free, webinars and sessions. As Chaz said, on LinkedIn, you can get exposed to different things, but, take advantage of as many learning opportunities as you can. And I try to read something new every single day. And sometimes that's not at work, right? So I am not going to lie, being an infection preventionist is kind of a nonstop journey, and you do have to read off hours. If anybody enters IP and thinks it's kind of an 8 and skate type of job or a 9 to 5, it really isn't. And even if you're not actively working off hours and weekends, you should be trying to learn more, study more, and expose yourself to more if you really want to be well-rounded. And it's a lot of sweat equity. I would just encourage our new people to don't overstretch yourself. As Chaz and I are talking about, do this, do that, it is important to take care of you And I know APIC has a lot of emphasis on wellness and taking care of you. So I'm not, sitting here telling you to be an IP 24/7. You do have to take some downtime, take a nature bath, read other things, and just, relax so that when you do come back to work, you are recharged and able to face whatever challenge you might encounter that day.
Chance, what
Yes.
about you? What are your thoughts regarding that?
Yeah, kind of along the same lines as what Lisa mentioned, however, with a twist. I think that we place a lot of attention as IPs on the technical part of our job, and certainly that is very important. It's instrumental in everything that we do every day. But also in the competency model, one of the domains is leadership. And so I would encourage all of us to never stop growing as a leader. Those skills are transferable no matter where you go or what you do. And it really is the difference between you being a successful IP and I'll say a more successful IP. I think you can get to a certain point of success relying on the technical aspects of what we do. But at some point, you have to transition and rely on those leadership skills to take your program to the next level. We all know we have been IPs, and we know we oftentimes don't have the authority over people to get the things done that we need to get done. So we have to rely heavily on influence. And so a great leader knows how to influence and inspire those that they're working with. And that comes from knowing about yourself, learning about leadership, knowing your strengths, knowing your weak spots, and how to compensate for those weak spots. And so, again, would strongly encourage people to get out there, take some leadership assessments, courses, whatever you can to improve yourself as a leader.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
very much so. Yes. I think one of the key, Lorenza. I think one of the keys to success is to definitely start before you're ready. And so I love that advice about taking the initiative and then also, keeping it in the back of your mind that you might be rejected. But if you wait until you're 100% ready, we might not ever start. So I think that is very, very good advice to take the initiative, to put yourself out there, because at the very least, you're going to learn something about yourself that you can apply to your future self.
Definitely. And one thing that I would like to add based on that last tidbit is, what leadership traits would you recommend that future leaders possibly should work on? Because as we know, it is absolutely important that leaders possess positive leadership traits in order to promote a synergistic infection prevention team. So what are some leadership traits that they should look out for to ensure that they are an effective leader?
I would say,
Lerenza, go ahead, Chaz.
I would say communication is a big one. And so learning how to lead up, down, and all around, to your peers, that takes communication skills. And so I would say pay a lot of attention to, being an effective listener, when to talk and when not to talk, and just in how you approach and interact in different situations. Is this a good time? So being sensitive and knowing your audience and kind of putting yourself in their shoes. And then the other one is emotional intelligence is a big deal when it comes to infection prevention. And that will address how we see the world and how our stuff can cause us to perceive things. And then it can also help you with being aware of those that you're interacting with. And so, communication and emotional intelligence, I think, go a long way in our field.
I completely agree. And that's good advice, not just in the field, but in life in general.
Lorenzo and Kelly, the other thing I would add to Chaz's about EI, emotional intelligence, is collaboration skills. So, Chaz touched on the influencer. There is a thing called the influencer model. But one thing I find with sometimes younger IPs is they do feel that they have to be black and white, right? Because a lot of what we read, to Chaz's point about technical, it is black and white, right? But really applying that to the real world, there is gray. And you do have to approach problems with some flexibility and the willingness to collaborate. So you might not be able to go in and get everything you want, but you have to make a decision in advance. What is the minimum and what will I tolerate as far as negotiating? So, anything you're trying to do with other stakeholders in the hospital, it really is about that collaboration and not throwing the book, if you will, at people, because that's not how infection prevention works. It really is. It is multidisciplinary, and everybody kind of has to meet in the middle. And I would add, you will be perceived then as a person within a leadership role that is easier to work with, and people then will come to you more with their situations or dilemmas or compromises, versus if they know you're always going to say no to something, or you're just going to reference a resource or a reference or a guideline, then they might kind of go around you or try to avoid you. But if they see you more as flexible and collaborative, I assure you, you will probably get more emails and more phone calls.
I agree. I believe that our role can be a mediator sort of role a lot of times, coming between perhaps maybe facilities and nursing, and they're both having challenges over a certain topic. And then we're brought in and, the conversation, we wind up saying, well, what are your challenges? Well, what are your challenges? Where can we meet in the middle? So I have found that kind of emotional intelligence and listening and being a good communicator can bridge a problem so that we can all reach a solution that's best for the patients.
Absolutely. One thing that I would add to that conversation is practicing humility and really respecting our stakeholders' professions. Yes, we are the subject matter experts, but definitely partner with respective stakeholders in order to implement initiatives at the betterment of the healthcare system. Really being humble in taking in the information in which they're providing, seeking knowledge and really asking inquisitive questions, opposed to essentially wanting to take over how their processes and procedures are implemented. So one of the things I feel is important is also being humble when approaching stakeholders.
Yeah, I really like that, Lerenza. And another cliche or tidbit that I've gotten is be curious and not judgmental. And
Yes.
I've applied that so many times in interactions, and it really does get you a lot further. It actually will help you solve the problem quicker than it is if you walk in guns blazing because you think you know the situation and you know what's going on. So wholeheartedly agree with what you just said.
That is great advice. So Chaz and Lisa, do you have any last minute takeaways that you want our listeners to have from today's conversation?
I would just say don't give up. If you have this fire in your belly to be an infection preventionist, or if you already are an IP and you want to grow, don't give up, because there's plenty of resources out there to assist you, but there's also plenty of other infection preventionists out there willing to help you and pull you up as well. I think one of the beauties of our profession is we don't eat our young, right? Mm-hmm. We embrace them, we welcome them, we wrap our arms around them, and we're all here to support each other.
I love that. Chaz, any parting words, tips of advice for the listeners?
Yeah, just, actually want to reiterate the same thing Lisa said. Don't give up. Hopefully, a lot of the things we've shared with you can help you take what you've experienced already in a different direction. And I'll just, reaffirm that getting connected is probably one of the best things that you can do for your career. And it's so easy with LinkedIn to just reach out to people, connect with them. And like Lisa said, we are a very friendly bunch. We openly welcome people in, and we want to help people get in the field because those of us who have been around a while, we recognize where IP is headed if we can increase the pipeline of people coming into the field. So you'll get in eventually. Just keep moving forward. Just keep swimming, like Dory says, and finding.
I love that.
Well, this was such an amazing conversation. Chaz, Lisa, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us.
Yes, Lisa, Chaz, it was such a pleasure to pick your brains. Thank you for all of your wonderful tips on not only breaking into the field, but then how to grow once you're in it.
Thanks for listening to APIC's 5-Second Rule Show. We want to hear from you. Visit us at www.5secondruleshow.org. That's with the number 5, where you can contribute to the conversation. Make sure you subscribe and rate us wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're so appreciative of the hard work each of you do every day to make a safer world through infection prevention. Remember, IP stands for Important Person. You are awesome. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.